Live on YouTube. Okay. I would like to just start. You will see, I'm sharing a screen through a second version of me, so don't worry, there aren't two of me. But you may see a photo of me and see double and wonder what's going on. But here, I'm going to get us started and introduce the panelists. So let's see. Oh, my computer is not liking me being on two things. Okay, I'm just gonna share it using my own computer. And see double and wonder what's going on. But yeah. Okay, let's see. Here we go. Oh, there we are. Okay, that took a moment. So thank you everyone for joining and, fun technical difficulties. I realized that I'm on an old version of Zoom that does not like all the new features on webinar. But here we go. So pardon this strange little moment here. There we go. So before I introduce the panelists, once again, welcome. Thank you so much for coming. We are so lucky to have three of the artists who created In Between the Heartbeat. We have Hirokazu Kosaka, Ogri, and Yuval Ron. So I'm going to introduce them both. They are truly quite legendary artists in our community. And so these are very abbreviated biographies because they have so many accolades and awards that I don't even know how to list them all. But Hirokazu Kosaka is the Master Artist in Residence here at JACCC. Hirokazu is also an ordained Shingon Buddhist priest and a master of the art of Japanese Kyudo, or archery, and runs the over a century-old LA Kyudo-kai. After graduating from the Chouinard Art Institute in 1970, he continued to study the traditional and contemporary arts, has received awards from the NEA, Rockefeller, New England Foundation, Creative Capital, and is a US Artist Fellow. And he has been actively advocating for Japanese arts and culture at our home, JACCC, since 1983. Next, we have Ogri, choreographer and dancer. Ogri became inspired to dance after meeting the Buto founder, Hijikata Tatsumi, in 1983. He's practiced traditional, also, fun fact, practiced traditional organic farming and experienced the rhythms and cycles of the most human lifestyle, which is the foundation of Oguri's dance. After moving to LA in 1991, really just a few years before In Between the Heartbeat, he founded Body Weather Laboratory LA with Roxanne Steinberg and went to tour extensively and internationally. In 2011, Oguri co-founded the Arcane Collective and has received so many awards that I really couldn't list them all. And last but not least on our panel, we have Yuval Ron, who is an award-winning composer, world music artist, creating unique original film scores, music for contemporary dance, theater, museums, new media, and healing and medical modalities, as well as concerts, tours, and recordings of the international renowned ethnic music and dance group, the Yuval Ron Ensemble, and music production company, the Yuval Ron Music. So please join me in welcoming our three panelists and a ghost version of myself. There we go. So welcome everyone. It's so good to have you. It's so wonderful that you're able to join us. I'm gonna go ahead and unmute you all so we can have this wonderful, it's pretty informal conversation. So we're gonna have a little conversation about this project and some reflections on In Between the Heartbeat, 23 years later. There will be an opportunity for some Q&A afterwards. So if folks have any questions, You don't have to wait. You can plop them in the Q&A box. There's a button, should be just on the bottom of your Zoom screen. And you can type in any questions that you have as you listen, and then we'll have some time at the end to answer. So thank you, everyone, so much for joining. It's so good to bring us all together, and I've had such a privilege to work alongside Hirokazu, to get a chance to work with Ogri 2 years ago, and then finally to be able to meet you all. Yes, thank you. So to get started, this is the first episode in a series of dance screenings that are really looking at dances that are partly about shadows, and explore the idea of shadow and embodiment and the layers of history. And so we are calling this series Okage-sama, and this was partly from conversations with Hirokazu. So I wanted to, start us off just, to talk about the larger series and ask Hirokazu if you could share a little bit about, what Okage-sama means, the sort of phrase that it comes from, and we'll then start there.
Yeah, Okage-sama is in Japanese. It's really, I think, the literal translation will be the thank you for the shadows. It's all about this kind of a subliminal psyche that works in a Japanese cultural language. And again, it's infinite shadows, not just one shadows, but I think multiple shadows that intertwines the thankfulness or the compassionate word for thank you. And I think that is one of the definition of Okage-sama deshita. It's a past tense, Okage-sama deshita. But mostly it's when someone thank you for accomplishments or goal, they use that word. It's the sensitivity is very different than thanking someone here in a Western language. Japanese are very, very, I think, most humble in a way, and just not saying thank you. But again, even to your shadow are important. And I think that the series that we've been doing on the Veranda series is about the in-between space. And then the in-between the heartbeat is similar to Okage-sama deshita. It is an in-between space, not so much of the heart, but it is an in-between space of our space, where it's not black and white, but infinite shades of gray. It's not so much about yes and no, but infinite maybes. And a series that I was doing before the in-between the heartbeat was the Veranda series. And the Veranda, I remember my mother used to tell me, go play the Veranda. And I always thought it was a Japanese word. But when I entered the Buddhist monastic life, my class took me to a Sanskrit class where the word veranda came up. And veranda was not Japanese, but it came from ancient language, from Sanskrit language. Anyway, it's an in-between space. And this particular title came out of my practice of Japanese kyudo, or the archery. I think when I was very young, I was not able to hear my heartbeat. But I think prolonged practice, I was able to hear my heartbeat and able to release my arrow in between my heartbeat. Some of you have seen the the practice of shooting the bow. It's a kind of very, very meditative. We call it Ritsuzen. It's not Zazen. Zazen means sitting. Ritsuzen means standing meditation. And when we are listening, when we practice the shooting of the arrow, it's the heartbeat. If you release your arrow on the beat of the heart, the arrow, I believe it's in a long distance. You could see the arrow, on a kind of wobble stage. But if you release the arrow in between your heartbeat, you could see it. It's going straight. I remember I was tested by a sort of medical doctor that when I meditated in a standing position, I was able to go, my heartbeat was about 45 per minute, which is equivalent to a marathon runner. And if you do that, I think you could really, really slow down your heartbeat and able to meditate in that stage. So that title came out of that. And perhaps we could talk about a little bit more about that, Scott, maybe to other panelists.
Sure. Yes. So yeah, and I love. I mean, there's something so interesting both in this idea of one's presence, and being really like more than just yourself. To thank someone's shadow is to thank like all of the unseen work and the people who were a part of this moment that aren't able to be present. And then I think paired with this idea of the in between the heartbeat, and I think what you've always shared with me, the idea of shoot yourself, that it is about this sort of letting go of the ego in order for it's not about reaching the target. But yes, with that sort of the beginnings of this project and this idea of the in between the heartbeat and Kyudo archery, maybe Ogri and Yuval kind of share how and Hirokazu kind of share how this project started, like really the kind of impetus for this project and how you started to work together.
Okay, should I talk? Yuval, you want to go or I can start?
Please.
Yeah, okay. So I am here in Los Angeles since '91. Yes. I first start with my dance practice in downtown, in the Sunshine Mission, Casa de Rosas. This is the oldest homeless women's shelter in Los Angeles. And that was an art project in the shelter. Sarah Elgard, who is a wonderful choreographer in Los Angeles, she invited us, myself and my partner Roxanne Steinberg and Melinda Ling, to form the like a workshop teaching dance to the homeless women. So that was my starting point in a dance career in Los Angeles. So while I am doing that teaching workshop and doing a self-produced dance performances. So one day, I made a flyer and a postcard for my dance performance, and I want to distribute for my community or theater. Or then I visit JCCC with with like a shopping bag of the postcard. Then I asking one gentleman who has working for making a exhibition. That was Mr. Kosaka. The Kosaka-san was in charge of the exhibition in a Doizaki gallery, and he was taking that postcard, looking. Ogri-san, I met you before. You and I met before. That was very shocking. yeah, he's so friendly and very nice, but I don't know. I don't think I met him. And of course, I'm very still new from the Japan in Los Angeles. So that was first meeting with Kosaka-san. Yeah, and then I had my first solo dance in a race, Los Angeles Contemporary Exhibition. In that time, in the 90s, they had located in the middle of the downtown. It's a very rough neighborhood. It's like a bunker or like a fort. So I made a first solo dance there. And I think Kosaka-san sending some stuff from the JCCC. I think Linda Machida was, one of the key persons of this project. She came to see my solo dance. And also Boaz Balkan, who is in a dancer in this piece. He was a student of Carrot's studying the dance. And so after that, he is participate my dance company, my dance workshop. And Boaz, he's a Israeli dancer. This is wonderful dancer. He's now in Denmark and doing a lot of dance practice, dance therapy. So between Boaz brought Yuval Ron to the studio. And we met in the studio, and Yuval was watching my practice and dance. And after I asked him to run the music and compose the music in a piece in the Cal State LA, a piece. And afterwards, yeah, maybe it's boring, but let me continue. And I had my solo dance in JCCC and Japan America Theater, former Aratani Theater. And after that solo dance, Kosaka-san mentioned to me to do some collaboration work. Yeah, I think that's at the very, very beginning of In Between the Heartbeat. And in 95 or 96, we made some like a photo session of the press photograph and preview piece. So one of the photo in the slideshow you just introduced, there are many dancers, like 6 or 7 dancers in that time. Yeah, that was very, like a 15 minutes preview. And we used Xerox machine, actual Xerox machine. And yeah, so after that, we had many meetings with Kosaka-san, and we made a full piece. Since after that should be making a full piece. That's all for the beginning. And yes, for the creation. Kosaka-san wrote a lot of like a script sketch. Yeah. So dance is more like a scene to scene to like a moving and changing the scene. I have very impressive for the very beginning scene. Yeah. At the beginning scene, actually, I should tell you that's about shooting arrow. So very, very beginning of the performance and towards the end of the performance, Kosaka-san several shoot 2 times. And he never showed his body. And arrow is just crossing on the stage, basically invisible. I don't know how many people really realize that the arrow is crossing the stage. So very beginning, he was at the preparing in the, wing, stage stage right side. Yeah, and I was like going to the pit. So orchestra pit is totally down. So Kosaka-san is ready to shoot. I am like a bullet brute to it's getting there. Yes. And that's about shadow and that's like about subconsciousness. So the dance, my concept was very much like avoid ego or not individuality. Yes. I'm choosing that the costume was naked. So everybody born as naked. So let's go back to that original point. So with naked and the beginning and you will see that the performance, but what as I was ready like a brute in ready to shoot. And that idea of veranda, which is like there are many, many layers. Each time I had a talk with Kosaka-san, something like explain how many layers we have to the stage, you know. So orchestra pit and fire curtain and screen and backdrop. So image I had, I am not human being, yeah. And I start like jumping on the front of the screen with a shadow, yeah. So it's like a metaphor of like heartbeat, boom, boom, boom. And as soon as the curtain is coming up, so it's like a copy of myself is there. It's like I'm like a sperm. Sperm is like released from the penis or something. And I'm only one going to the direction towards crossing the layer on the layer, breaking the layer. Oh, one more thing, I remember that each time I think Kosaka-san told me that Gutai her art movement. Yeah, one artist I'm very inspired too. Murakami,
So,
yeah, isn't it? And he's like breaking a paper performance. I'm totally really inspired that too, and who I am too. I'm crossing that or layer to the layer. Yeah. And in that space has like almost like a crosswalk. We're making a very special crosswalk and a lot of metaphor is also like a guardian god to be there. So two ladies is making laughing to the going to the crossing that space. It's a lot of metaphor and image. I'm from here to there. What is between here and there? And the place, it's like an alien place, not here, Ikai. It's not like an ordinary place to transforming. That was a more idea of choreography and as a being, as a performer in there. Yeah,
Yeah,
I have more things. Yeah,
sorry.
yeah. I have more things to say, but I think that's enough. So.
No, I love hearing these stories. I had never heard how well, I guess how Hirokazu and you, Ogri, met again here at JACCC. I had never heard that story. That's wonderful. Yes, and I, as you were speaking here, I thought maybe I could actually just share some of the stills from the performance of what you mentioned. I think I had heard about the shooting of the arrow at the beginning, but I don't even think I quite noticed it in the film. But have experienced that in Koto Hajime of Hirokazu shooting from out of view and just hearing the whoosh of the arrow. That's kind of shocking. so that's
But Scott, this happened on the stage between the dancer, it was how close is like between the dancer going there, better watch out.
I'm glad, Hirokazu, I'm glad that you are a master of Kyudo, because that could have gone very wrong.
Mhm.
But here I will share very quickly just some of the images of what Ogri was sharing. So here we have, this is coming up right from the orchestra pit, the first layer, and sort of the right the loading up like the bullet ready to fire through the layers.
Mhm.
And then this is a little bit closer, seeing that actual copy machine that's causing those shadows. So that we could just, I would share some of those very quickly, just for folks who have reference if you haven't had a chance to see the film. But yes, I mean, I think we had to put a little warning on, on the film that there's
Mhm.
some partial nudity, but no, it was an artful choice. And yeah, and this sort of beginning of no clothes, and then I think right sort of as the performance progresses, these like raincoats that are then kind of tossed off towards the end,
Mhm.
and really interesting in the sort of slowly revealing the layers. I thought, Yuval, since you haven't had a chance, if you want to share a little bit about how you got involved in the project, and then
Yes, yes, sure. Um, I came to Los Angeles in '94. Before that, I was. Can you hear me? Yeah.
yes.
Yeah.
Um, I came to Los Angeles from Boston, where I went to school in Berklee College of Music, and I worked in New York and in Boston for about 9 years before I came to LA. And before that, I was in Israel. I was born and raised in Israel. And in Israel, I worked with an Israeli dancer who went to Japan to study with Kozo Ono. And she was the first Israeli dancer to be trained with the Butoh master Kozo Ono. And she came back to Israel after a few years. And I met her. I was a young composer. I was 19 years old. I had no idea what Butoh is. I had no idea about Buddhism. I had no idea about Japanese art or anything. And I was a young composer for theater when I was 19, and I met this dancer, Neta Plotsky, her name, and she did her first dance show in Israel, influenced by what she learned in Japan. And she asked me to compose the music because she saw a theater piece called it's a play by Yeats, the Irish poet, named the jealousy of Emer, I think Emer's jealousy, and I composed the music for that. And there was some ritualistic slow movement in that play, and so the dancer Neta uh, asked me to compose the music. And then that was my first experience with Japanese culture through an Israeli dancer who went to Japan. And all I heard was from her. And then Sankai Juko, the dance company from Japan, came to Israel and did a show, and I went to see them. And I was very impressed by seeing it. And then Kozo Ono came to Israel. Neta brought Kozo Ono, and he did a solo performance. And he looked like a woman, and he took 30 minutes to go from one corner of the stage to the other corner of the stage. And then when he reached the front, he opened his mouth, and pebbles start falling out of his mouth, the pebbles that was in his mouth for half an hour while he was walking slowly. And I never seen anything like that, and it was such an inspiring experience for me. And and working on a show, composing the music for Neta, who studied with this great man, Kozo Ono, was a very, it opened my imagination, it opened my sensitivity to different senses of time, working very slow, developing the music slowly. And when I came to study in Boston and I got into writing music for films, I had no contact anymore with this kind of art for 9 years, and I missed it. I was I was writing music for theater and for dance and for films in New York and Boston, but nothing with Japanese culture or with Butoh or anything in that direction. And I came to Los Angeles to work in film and television. And one of the first places that I went to a party and I met an Israeli guy named Boaz. And he told me, I asked him, what do you do? And he said, oh, I dance with a great Japanese master of dance. And I said, a Japanese master of dance? Can I meet him? It was like I felt like it was like an oasis in the middle of a desert. For 9 years I was completely. I thought it was something I will never see again, and I'll never be in touch with that again. There was nowhere in America that I've seen. I was 9 years in America, and I didn't meet anybody who knew about Japanese dance or Butoh, about meditative dance. I was completely in the different circles of people that were just around film and television. So I was very excited when I heard from Boaz that he is dancing with a master from Japan, and he introduced me to Oguri and to Roxanne, and I just sat there in the rehearsals, and I just enjoyed just sitting there and reconnecting to that sensitivity. And it was wonderful for me to connect with Oguri and Roxanne and the whole company. And then they introduced me to Kosaka for doing the music for In Between the Heartbeat. And when I heard from Kosaka about In Between the Heartbeat, I was thinking about what can I do musically to invoke these philosophies or these ideas and sensitivities of in between, not a yes and not a no, not a not a female, not a male, not a white, not a black, not day, not night. It's in between. And so I was thinking about musical sounds that would be between electronic sounds and acoustic sounds. And sometimes I created homemade instruments that sometimes sounded electronic, but they were really acoustic. And then I found electronic ways to, for example, taking a string quartet, which is acoustic, real instruments, organic string quartet that I recorded, and I ran it through wah-wah pedals of electric guitars, and that manipulated into being more electronic. So is it electronic or is it acoustic? It was not clear what it is, and it kept morphing from being acoustic, fully acoustic, to being more electronic. And the same thing with the sound of the Xerox machine. I recorded the Xerox machine in the recording.
I was about to ask about that story. I was like, you've got to share the story of the Xerox machine.
Yeah, Kosaka-san wanted me to use the Xerox machine sound and manipulate it. So I went all the way in the recording studio. I found that on the other side of the hall, there far away on the other side of the building, there was a Xerox machine. And I said I wanted to record it at night while everybody were away, but there were few people working in the building. So in order to get a microphone to record that Xerox machine, which was all the way around the hallways, all the way on the other side of the building, I connected all the microphone cables that I could find the recording studio where I was working during the day. But during the night, I could do whatever I want, and that's when I worked on the piece. I connected all those mic cables and ran them through the hallways all around the building, all the way to the last room where the Xerox machine was. And I plugged it to a microphone and I recorded. I put a lot of paper in the machine and just press copy. And I recorded it for 20 minutes. And the people who were working in the building still were walking in the hallways, going all the way, and they were really curious. They were walking, following the cable. Why there's a cable on the floor? And then they asked me, "What are you doing?" And I said, "I'm recording a Xerox machine." They said, "What? What are you recording? A Xerox machine? For what? For a sound effects library?" I said, "No, it's an instrument. It's a musical instrument in a new piece that I'm working on." They thought I really lost it. They thought I was working too many hours.
I mean, you may have lost it, but yeah, I mean, yeah.
Another thing I'd like to mention about In Between the Heartbeat, each piece, each movement in this work, I composed separate pieces, like movements that were 6 to 8 or 10 minutes long. And I wanted to have a pulse, a heartbeat in the music, and each piece has a different heartbeat. One of the pieces, I found a sound of a helicopter, the blades of the helicopter that goes really fast. I took a recording of that and I slowed it down 3 octaves lower. I just took it down like 3 octaves on the piano, which slowed it down, and it became and you don't know what it is. What is that? Because it doesn't sound like a helicopter anymore, but it's pulsating like a heart, and it's not 100% perfect like a computer pulse because it's a machine. It's the engine. It's not 100% exact. So it had this variety of an engine like the heart, and then each piece had a different kind of heartbeat in it, pulsating.
Yeah, that is just like such an incredible, just like oral auditory experience. I was only, 10 years old, I think, when this performance happened, but I can, obviously the film captures a lot of the spirit, but it can't capture the entire reel, that experience that could only really happen at that one moment. Yeah. And I can, like, just to be able to have heard and felt that and heard the real arrows and heard the helicopter is so incredible. And I love kind of bringing in this idea of, the in between, the sort of non-binary way of thinking when we're, talking about like the digital, the analog, the machine, the heartbeat. And even, as we think about like ritual and performance, and this as, a pretty like meditative performance and collaboration. I thought maybe because it's so interesting to learn about the sound and the score that happens. That's such an important part of the piece. And maybe Hirokazu, I wanted to share this image very quickly. Here we go. Of one of those layers here. This is obviously a little behind the scenes peek at this layer of cloth. And I, wanted to ask Hirokazu if you could share a little bit about, what this is and sort of the memories attached to this curtain. Oh, you're muted, Hirokazu.
I arrived in America in 1958 with my young brother, who was 6 years old. I was only 10. I was to stay for 1 day, 1 year. When I spent my first night, it was in November the 19th. And it was very cold. And it was a bunk bed with 1 sheet of bedding on it. And when I entered the bed, it was hot. This is 1958. In Japan, we never had an electric blanket before. We had a big, thick cotton futon, shikibuton, all the futon was heavy. But I never realized there was a heat in a thin coat of blanket. So that night I couldn't go to sleep because of I thought it was going to get burned up. And I think I had a long night that day. And I think I felt that this incredible almighty light coming out of this electric blanket. And later, as you see on the stage, you could see the copy machine being that almighty light. During the process of this in between the heartbeat performance, I asked the community here to give us your old blanket. I remember that time the electric blanket was not good for you. I mean, the electric was, the it was part of the, I don't know, it was, everyone had the blanket sitting in the garage someplace. By the time the performance came up, I had almost 200 electric blankets, from garages of Japanese American community. Some of them were very old, from probably 1950s, I think. And it was very colorful and still had the electric cords on it. And that's what the stage series installation was all about. For the copy machine, the first one we did was a real copy machine. It was a Xerox copy machine. And the second time we did, I had an engineer from Xerox come and engineer for us the machine itself. So we kind of mimicked the copy machine with a lot of lights and motors. And our stage crew at the theater built me kind of a similar to the copy machine that we saw at that time. I know the dancer was very heavy, and we have to have almost 100-pound weight on it. So I went to buy a plexiglass that was, I think, an inch thick. So Ogri-san could, jump around on the copy machine. Yeah, so those are the things that was used for the stage design.
And it casts such a beautiful shadow across the stage as slowly emerging out of the orchestra pit. I see in the chat Roxanne, oh hi Roxanne, mentioned that Boaz was playing the role of the double as you were jumping on the Xerox machine.
So the conversation I had with Ogri-san and Yubal was a traditional theater called bunraku, and it's a bunraku puppetry. And I mentioned to Ogri-san that that he just mentioned the subconscious of a man, of a body, is about this black figure that controls the puppet. And I think that's what we were trying to do with the shadows. The shadow being the black figure of the puppet. And I think, the puppet have this incredible gesture that human body cannot do. These two black figures could control hands and feet with a movement that I don't think the human body cannot do. I mean, that's what I think initial conversation with Ogri-san was similar to the traditional bunraku theater, how these black figures move around, and on the stage, or with a shadow kind of engulfed the stage.
Yeah, maybe Ogri, you could share a little bit about taking these ideas of the all black clad puppeteers in bunraku and sort of how you interpreted that within the dance.
Yeah.
The choreography.
So like a movement as like a puppet. This is a kind of big theory in dance too. Like making a movement purpose to bring outside. So using a muscle to moving to the joint, but the consciousness have to go outside. I don't say the beyond, but something like a see myself from outside to moving. I mean, differently like some point erasing like ego. I'm operating or operated. Like I'm puppet or puppeteer in the same time. That term is like as a dancer should be for the moving. Yeah. So if dance moving with muscle is not there yet. So it's more about using more nerve nerve to working for the dance and movement, and also being, yeah, dance to the beyond like a, how to say, often people saying the dancer, audience seat is like a reflection. So this is still mirror to seeing yourself. Dancer have to see beyond the audience, to go through the audience to see, find out self. That's kind of philosophical kind of my theory. So ego, yeah, and the extension of the image, just go different place, different dimension. Yeah, I mean, theater is it's not the real space to bring in the theater. I'm doing a dance, but it's, let's say, similar things, theater or dance. We transform the space to the another place. I think I said something like a alien world, like I said, we call it ikai. Like a story like this, in a full moon, no, opposite full moon, new moon night, once a day in a month, right? In the forest is completely dark. You know what happened? All trees are laying down and sleeping. Only one day rest. So it's that kind of world. I imagine that in a dance in a space to transform. Yeah, yeah. I talk with that with Yuval actually. This kind of
Yes.
yeah. That his music, his sound is very much related. Yeah, maybe Yuval can explain that.
Uh, Oguri, it was interesting. I had a meeting first, I think, with Kosaka, and Kosaka told me about the philosophy of in between the heartbeat, and a lot of information that was very. Um, it was inspiring me to work on the music. And then I met with Oguri, and Oguri looked at me and said, "You know, the sound of in a forest when a tree falls and nobody is in the forest." To hear this, what is going to be that sound of a tree that breaks, the sound of the wood of a tree that breaks and fall in the forest? That is what I think the music should be. And that was really wild. That was a wild inspiration to hear this from Oguri. Then I really try to live this idea and to feel what it's going to sound like in me, and then to transfer it to instruments. And I wrote it for the string quartet and the cello, and this is one of the movement in this piece, which is very very powerful piece. It's called Dark Angels, Dark Forest Angel, I think. And interestingly enough, years later, uh, PBS did a documentary about the Maya code, the language of the Maya, and there's a scene where the Spanish burning all the books of the Maya people, burning all the manuscripts, burning all their books. There's only 3 manuscripts survived. A whole culture lost all their books. So there's that scene. It's a terrible scene that the monks, the Spanish monks, burning all the books. And PBS asked me if they could use that music, that piece of the Dark Angel forest with that breaking sound of the wood of the tree. They wanted that for this scene because it's just a terrible feeling of breakage. It's hard to describe it, but it came out through the music thanks to this idea that Oguri gave me.
That's great sound, yes. Tengu Daoshi. That is some word from the Japan. Tengu is like a spirit in the forest.
Woods in the
Yeah.
forest.
Yeah.
Right.
Yes, I mean just yeah, it's like a deeply like it's good. Yeah, it's kind of a sad. I even see Roxanne in the chat saying, you know, it's a haunting, you know,
Yeah.
kind of tragic piece.
Yeah.
And yes, that sound. I mean, the sound when there's no one to hear it but the tree, you know, and it seems like such an interesting thought to pair that also in this other work with, you know, this immense loss of what can't really be recovered. But I think, you know, I'm also thinking, I kind of returning again to the ritual and the performance. Ogri, you know, speaking about, you know, the performer, the reflection, having to see through, and even the idea of, you know, the shadow as another kind of, you know, reflection, or a thing that could be controlling you as like a puppet, but this, you know, slowly kind of going through the layers, one of which, you know, is an enormous layer of electric blankets. So I see, you know, again, there's so many layers to the work, and this kind of attempting, I feel like, to kind of get down to, you know, who is the person, you know, the released of their ego, like who are you, like deep down beneath those layers, and that idea of the in-between space and the in-between the heartbeats is so powerful. And it must have been such an incredible experience, both as a performer and for the audience, to be kind of witnessing this this shedding, which kind of for me comes to one of the, you know, closing parts of the performance, which I'll share a little image of right now. So let me just get over there. So this is, I know you, Ogri, you mentioned this is one of the early versions of it with the dancers, but this closing, which I think is, you know, a little bit hard to, right? So there's one, the shedding of that jacket, of those black raincoats, and then this intensely bright light, which I think folks may not, you know, it may not know exactly how bright that was. So maybe Hirokazu, if you could share about this sort of finale to the performance, and sort of what your thoughts were about this light.
Yeah, I wonder if I could share something with you. This image here, we didn't, Oguri-san and myself, and you know, Yuval too, I've been using a lot of searchlight, and this particular searchlight is a 25 million candlelight. This particular piece, it was a night of full moon, and these white cutout circle with the ratio of the eyesight of how you see the full moon. We threw this 10,000 of them from the 5th floor roof of the JCC, and the people, the audience who's watching it, I mean, you couldn't tell if full moon or the paper. And it was just after I shot with the arrow into the sky. It's like shooting the moon and bursting the moon. And so all these are fragments of the moon. But anyway, this is the searchlight that we use. In fact, for the in between the heartbeat, we use 2 searchlight coming out of the audience door, and it was quite bright. It was, yeah. And I thought maybe Scott, since we're talking about, you know, the collaborations, I thought maybe this one too could be seen as a searchlight piece at the Getty Museum, who Yuval did the music, and Ogri's dancers here pulling the strings. And that was one of the collaboration that we did, which was kind of very interesting. And I think the final one that we were very, very, we worked very hard on this one was the the Plaza Piece, which is this one. It is a quite intense light coming out from the searchlight again. And I think the U-Ball, you did the music for this one too. But anyway, I thought maybe just to share just some of the pieces that we worked with.
I mean, all of them are so beautiful, and just to see, I mean, so much has happened at JACCC, so much incredible work that, is there and then it's gone, except in documentation.
Yeah.
But Hirokazu and, Ogri and Yuval, with what was your idea about the spotlight? I mean, I know I have ideas and interpretations, as this, kind of returning back to being fully nude and this like blinding light that is just like, kind of, I mean, it's both like making it very difficult to see, but also intensifying the shadows. But what were your thoughts about the spotlight and in between the heartbeat? And obviously it may have shifted as you continue to collaborate, but.
Yeah, just for me, it's about search, it's about searching who we are. I think these lights sort of give us this kind of a artificial light that is so bright that I mean, even the copy machine the old copy machine that Xerox made were very, very bright. I mean, the new ones that I have in my office right now, it's not that bright. You could see it, into the glass. But the early Xerox and the IBM copy machine were very, very bright. And I think that too, it's the presence of God, almost that kind of feeling that I thought I would, that one of the searchlight, it was mine. I bought it, and yeah, so so my interpretation of that searchlight. Maybe Ogri-san and Yuval have kind of your interpretation of that light.
Yeah, that was a very shocking and emotional feeling I had in between for the last part of the in between the heartbeat. Yes. Actually, I don't think we did any rehearsal that one.
No.
Yes. So that just happened, just boom, to the first premiere night in the end of the show. Yes. Yes. Shocking and emotional. And audience member, they didn't see the light. They're all coming from the back. So I'm the only person. I'm showing the back, but the back bending is kind of like completely like a vulnerable position. I can do anything. So back bending, all right? And I'm like feeling like a sacrifice, the part. So it's some really symbolic as like I'm kind of like cutting out my ego or myself there. I'm like a piece of like a, sacrificed doll or charm or, yeah. That was experience, yes. And working with the outside, it's a completely different sensitivity for me. It's very much like a very much metaphor or symbolic to the moon. Yeah, of course, that was the purpose, but the moon itself is a reflection from the sun. So, oh yes, that was a mirror. That was a mirror to see, very much realize with my imagination and what is moon is. So another way of describe or measuring myself to the moon, how we imagine making an imagination since my childhood, watching the moon, still using a little like I don't know, this is technology or machine to use, we making still playing or making like a fantasy to working with moon. Of course, it's a front of the moon. It's, I don't know how many candles, but it's for the nothing too. But wow, like I will like throw the stone to the moon. But totally, I felt, oh, it's really playful imagination. That's very much appreciated with that concept. Thank you.
Yeah, if I may add, I experienced it in the audience, but I was operating the music. I was in the sound booth and operating the music and being in the space. And Oguri was in front of the target. The target fell down first. There was a screen with a target, a round target, and Oguri was in front of the target. And then the ushers opened the doors, and suddenly two intense lights came from two um, directions, and they hit the target. It was like two incredible, superhuman, out of this world arrows of light going in on Oguri and the target. It was very powerful, and it was something that broke the whole illusion of the theater. Suddenly, we've done everything in the theater, in the space. All the magical things happened in the space: the sound, the lights, the shadows, the movements, the set design, everything. And suddenly the doors open, and something beyond us, beyond the theater, comes in so powerfully. It was really an incredible moment. It's hard to describe even the feeling that I had when it happened. It's hard to describe it in words, but it was something surprising. It surprised us, and it was overwhelming. It was beyond what we felt until then. It was something beyond that, and I think Kosaka-san, achieved that with this very unusual effect with light coming from outside. It didn't even come from the lobby. The searchlights were in the plaza outside. It had to shine through the lobby because the lobby has glass walls, fortunately. So the light came from the plaza through the glass walls of the lobby, through the open doors, all the way over the walkways, the alleys, into over the stage. It's extraordinary.
Yes, I mean, what I'm surprised people didn't like pass out from the shock. But I mean, it feels like it's so much a part of the concept of the work. I mean, in some ways, I feel like maybe the most powerful moment, may be that in between moment right before the doors open, where there is this entire investigation of the self, of the layers of the self, of who is the person beneath the ego, beneath all of the layers, who is that vulnerable body, sort of that is found with these enormous spotlights.
Hey, turn it on.
Oh, I see. Guys, we're having a little light experience of your own. But yeah, I mean, and then again, this just the thought of theater, right, as this kind of like for really both the performers and the audience of this, like the lights go out, you lose a sense of yourself, of space, of time, and you are witness to and participant in this experience, and then to have these wild spotlights just blast in and kind of shake you from this experience. I feel like that might be the moment in between the heartbeat. So incredible. Thank you so much for sharing. I think we have we have some folks sharing in the chat, but if anyone has any questions, feel free to plop it either in the chat or in the Q&A function. We'll just open it up now. And I see, Roxanne also sharing about the strange sudden change in the electric blankets, that suddenly people didn't like them anymore. But but all of these different designs and styles, and shared a little bit about the training, working with Kyudo bows with Hirokazu. Maybe maybe Oguri and Hirokazu and Yuval as well. Would you want to share a little bit about that training, and so how were the bows, incorporated into the training?
Yeah, いいですか？小坂さん invited me to the, observe the Kudo training. Yeah, that was a very beautiful practice thing they're doing. Yeah, it's a lot of like a repeating, like a, like a simulation practicing. Yeah, of course, martial arts is like this: repeat, repeat, repeat. Yes. Yeah, I learned a lot about walking, how they walk. Yes. So it's a part of that choreography of movement. Yeah, very much stick with walking with Kudo training walk. Yeah. That's one metaphor was I was thinking like I'm a row or bow, like suspending. So like one part of the movement is body is moving like leaning like a front, and almost fall and moving, almost fall to moving. So keeping that suspended body, and this angle is a kind of metaphor. But one poet I love in the Japanese poet, Issui Yoshida. He's a wonderful poet from the Hokkaido. So it's about like a leaning axis. Our Earth axis has a leaning like a 15 degree or something like that, and it's very much that concept too. Yes. So we're using that first using bow to making choreography, but like a transform to the body. So we didn't use the bow on the stage, but I remember working, inspiration and the training with that piece, bow and carry. Yeah.
Yeah, it's beautiful. I mean, beautiful. I think like that kind of like the body and the tension of the body and the releasing.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
Yeah.
Let's see, we got more. Yeah, I mean, and just even sharing, some of the work that you've done since, I think for me, it's really interesting, how collaboration and, this relationship and long, decades long relationship and collaboration to me very much connects to this idea of a releasing of the ego, right? Where many artists, only want to work for themselves, want things exactly how they want, but what you were able to make together is you have to release some of that. So, maybe would you like to share, just you've done so much together, but reflecting on this work kind of early on in your collaborations, looking back at this, I see Roxanne put, so much nostalgia, but what sort of memories and feelings come up in thinking about this, more than 20 years of working together?
I think we all inspire each other. And I would like to ask both Yuval and Ron, what's the next collaboration we can do? And I want to share with you. Perhaps you could be involved with my piece that I'm working right now. And let me share you this one. This piece, the title is called "The No Ghost of Bronzeville." And Bronzeville, it was a sort of town here in Little Tokyo between 1941 to 1946. Many of the African Americans were living, almost 80,000 African Americans was living here in Little Tokyo after the Japanese were interned in different camps. So you see this, the person here, Charles Parker and Miles Davis was performing here on First Street.
Wow.
I'm kind of writing a no performance a ghost, because the no performance, it's about ghost, And I'm asking one of the ghost, a no performer from Kyoto, to come and do a no performance with jazz group. And so perhaps Ogri-san, we could do some your portion, and then Yuval, maybe you could have some sound piece with it.
Sure.
So
Yeah,
It's
definitely.
interesting.
I love, Hirokazu,
Yeah,
you've got them on the record agreeing to collaboration. If folks are wondering about the collaborative artistic process, you're seeing it live.
Oh,
yeah, I actually wrote grants for this one already. And if it come through, maybe I would ask you to join us to celebrate the African Americans who were interned here, 80,000 of them from Louisiana, Mississippi in 1941 to 46, who lived in a very, very small apartment house on First Street and San Pedro. And I'm creating a ghost from that period. I think that it's, BM right now, the Black Lives Matter is very important for us here at the center. And I too, I mean, everything is lives matter, but I think our portion of creativity might add it to our society here. I think it'd be a wonderful tribute to community as well.
yeah, great. Yes. Yeah, thank you. Thank you for having this, Kosaka-san. Exciting.
Yeah, thank you
Yes.
for sharing this new creative idea. Kosaka often approached me and Oguri with ideas, with concepts, and it's Kosaka is an artist of concept and also of space. He creates a space, and he invites me and Oguri and the dancers to work with the space and complete it. You see, so a lot of time that's how those pieces start. Not always, but often it starts like that. And it's for me, it's a very interesting creative idea. And Oguri and I work in parallel. I work, which I thought it was quite magical in the beginning, but then I got used to it because I've been used to work with directors and choreographers who tell me exactly what they want, and they give me example of what music they want me to do. They frame it very tightly in the very beginning. But Oguri often would give me some wild image, and that's it. He didn't tell me what he wants. He would never tell me something like, I want, Frank Sinatra meets John Williams. He would never tell me that.
For Sinatra, John Williams.
That's usually choreographer saying.
So that's what most of my clients, most of my commission, kind of defining it. This is how creative they can get. But with Oguri, it's really, and Kosaka, it's really something. Uh, I feel I'm called to bring something that never been heard before. That's my job, and that is so much harder for me. It's such a harder challenge, and what helps is the poetic and philosophical ideas that they give me, and then we work. Oguri and I work separately. I work on the music, and Oguri works on the dance, and sometime a week before the show we meet, or I play the music for Oguri, or a few weeks before the performance. Sometimes I would invite Oguri to my recording studio while I was working, and I would show him materials, like, these materials I'm thinking about, these are kind of materials I'm thinking about, musical materials. And Oguri would react to it. He would resonate with some, and he would give me some feedback, but very general, very, very general feedback. And then we would put it together. the music and the choreography, and it was always magical. That it was maybe 95%, 98% of the time over 23 years, 25 years, that it was just like a glove on a hand. It just worked, and maybe 3% of the time, Oguri would try to work with it, and then he would tell me that maybe it's not the right thing, and then I would just replace it with something else. So Oguri would give me that feedback. But it's really a blessed collaboration. I mean, I think that my life and the life of Kosaka-san and the life of Oguri, prepared us. The way we grew up and what we read and what we saw and what we heard and the way we are, prepared us to work together. I certainly know about my life. All my life prepared me to work with Kosaka and with Oguri, because otherwise I wouldn't really get it. I wouldn't really fit in. I wouldn't really hear the sounds that would work. So everything led to this collaboration, in my view.
Thank you. Beautiful.
Yeah, it's such a, I mean, just even hearing the stories of how you all started, Oguri chancing upon Hirokazu in the at JCCC, and you've all thirsty to be able to work again within Japanese art forms, and then hearing of this Israeli dancer that eventually led you to Oguri, like the ways that our lives and the sort of all the things that sort of send us on our path, and for it to so magically intersect, and then for you to then create together, I think. And then kind of bringing in, Hirokazu, this new idea of really uplifting the history of Bronzeville and Little Turkey's history of the Black community that was here, and then was, pretty, in an awful way, really displaced right after the war. But to me, like hearing these stories and this experience, coming back to the, in between the heartbeat, the shooting of the self, the finding the vulnerable person, the self beneath it all, allowing for that, sort of allows for collaboration and allows for creation together, to actually make something that you could have never done alone. And I am so appreciative to have this time to bring the three of you together and be part of this conversation. And so excited to see this new collaboration that you've all officially agreed to. We have it on YouTube, recorded forever. But thank you so much, Hirokazu, Oguri, Yuval. It's been such a pleasure. And thank you, folks, everyone, for joining. We know it's, we're all zoomed out, so we really appreciate you being here. Just before we leave, I did want to share just what's coming up. So of course, this is a part of a series called Okage-sama. This month is In Between the Heartbeat. Next month, starting April 1st, we'll have Festival of Shadows. And then May 1st, we'll have Marissa Osato creating a newly commissioned piece, actually, partly exploring the history of Bronzeville as well. So I really hope that folks tune in, that you have a chance to watch this film, In Between the Heartbeat, and the upcoming 2 films as well. You can check it out on JACCC's website. Oh, there it is. Thanks, Alma. But, pretending that we're in a room full of people. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you very much.
Yeah,
Thank you, Scott.
Thank you. And we'll see you very soon for this play about Bronzeville.
Yeah.
Thank you,
That's
everyone.
exciting. Yeah.